Welcome to the EQ for Life podcast. EQ for Life is a podcast based on your views as a parent, a companion, an entrepreneur, or business leader, and how learning to be smart about emotions plays out in everyday life. And here's our host, a practitioner and teacher of emotional intelligence, Parrish Owen Taylor.
All right, here we are, another episode here of EQ for Life. I'm kind of excited about that. I'm always excited, but this guest here, Bill, I had to go in and look. Our guest today is Bill Jurgens. I know him through the athletic department over at Florida Tech. Bill, it was 2014 when we first came together.
Yeah, we're all friends.
Yeah. Well, we've certainly been through a lot, and I will say, I'm excited to talk about, emotional intelligence from your perspective, athletics, and all the roles that you've played, because you've played a lot of roles. You came up as an athlete, you were a coach, you've had some outstanding performances where then again, now you're an athletic director. So you're influencing the minds of other coaches. So I want to turn it over to you. I know we've kind of prepped for this a little bit, but
I looked at what we had talked about, and I got real excited about the boys in the boat. I think that really talks about the dynamics within a team. I really felt like I had already lived boys in the boat, maybe not at the Olympic level, but at the level in which our university competes. So I was very excited to hear about it, and I thought that. And then I saw a trailer, and I saw a documentary, and I said, "Yes, this really does sound like what is happening with rowing, and in fact, what is happening with every sport." And I'll go a step further. What is happening in business? When you look at the relationships of emotional intelligence, the high level that is being used, you see it more in some fields than in other fields. Definitely in athletics, it teaches you that. And student athletes that have gone through athletic program, when they get out, they're really better prepared for conducting business because they've had to do it. But Boys in the Boat is another one, and it was written so well. And I kept trying to look at the background of the author because he sounded like he actually knew all about rowing. But he did his research. At least he did a lot of research, and he put it together in a beautiful form. So what I thought I would do, if it's all right with you, is talk about the context in which these University of Washington rowers in 1936 won an Olympic gold medal, and how they got prepared for it. So the context, the coaches, some of the qualities of these coaches, and I even added in the coaches the coxswain because I thought he belonged in it, and then some of the qualities of the team members. What you're striving for is to have a uniform, in unison, beautiful rowing. Rowing is an art, and it obviously is a science, and it's an athletic competition. But it has a lot of details, and the people that go into it are from diverse backgrounds. And then I'd talk a little about the culture, because I firmly believe in any organization that you must strive to have a culture. And sometimes that culture is developed through years and years of people joining the program, and those individuals, in the case of rowing, would be some of the team members, would be talking to other team members, sort of letting the new ones know what the culture is, what the expectations are. I think culture is extremely important for any success. And sometimes we don't see it as that. We just see it as what has been done in the past. But when you start looking at culture and seeing the different things, let me just give you an example, like banners on the walls, people wearing shirts, that talk about their sport. All these things really create pride and enthusiasm for the activity that you're in. And so I see what's happening here very much applicable to businesses, to all organizations. And the more I did read the book, but it was only the last 4 days. And so I saw the movie. I'm going to see it again because it's like any good movie that you can look at it and look at it again and see things that you didn't see the first time. But
Right.
I thought George Clooney did a phenomenal job in directing this movie.
Of all the scenes in the movie, because you had me watch it, so I was taking notes. Which scene sticks out the most as it pertains to emotional intelligence? What comes to your mind as it pertains to emotional intelligence from the movie? Which scene?
It obviously every scene to me seemed to just talk emotional intelligence. I just think that probably the one that got me the most was the assistant coach for Washington when he was asked by the administrator, when the administrator talked to the head coach and said, I will replace you if you don't follow the guidelines that I would like to see you follow. And the assistant coach said, well, I'm just going to do the same thing.
In the hallway.
And yet earlier, the assistant coach had been disagreeing with him. And one of the greatest forms of leadership that I know of is that the leader provides an environment in which allows the subordinates to challenge him, to talk about him. And so I was it just got me to see him disagreeing with the coach. And that's what you want as a leader. If you have just sycophants that are, praising you and telling you only good things, then how are you going to become great? So when I saw that, and then I saw his loyalty, I just, that was, to me, that as small as it may have been, that was very exciting to me because
absolutely,
wait just a second, this guy's loyal.
Well, and to your point, and again, loyalty, we can talk a lot about loyalty. Again, getting pressed, getting pressured. That moment, he didn't hesitate, didn't wink in a bit, right? Said he's going to follow and do the same.
Exactly.
But to your point, the scene earlier where he's sitting with the coach and he's like, and he's doing what we call the peer check. Coach, are you sure you're doing the right thing here, man? Because our jobs are on the line. We need this, right? Right. So you saw that hint of question. That's emotional intelligence, right? To your point, being able to talk about it. I'm with you. I felt that moment.
Yeah. Let me just go through this because I do think the context is very important. So I ended up putting that first because you can have all the emotional intelligence in the world, but you need to make sure that it is being used in the environment and the context in which you're part of. And the context the way I saw it is that in 1936, the coach, Al Ulbrichtson, he had been there 10 years. So and I've always believed that it takes 10 years to become a master in your profession. And books have been written on that. So it was the 10th year. That was a good context because if he had only been there 5 years, maybe not so. But in 1933, the freshman crew won. It was very fast. It won in 34 and it won in 35. And then in 35, the JV won. So we had what he had was the making of a great team. And what made this even better to me, and the movie shared this as well as the book, is that he became accountable. And that is
about the coach?
Yeah, the coach, the head coach. He became very accountable. And I'm sort of going into the coaches now, context coaches, and that accountability was so strong. And see, he knew what the context was. He knew where he'd come from. He knew he'd never won an IRA before since he started in 1927. But he also knew that what he had now was great. And he went as far as saying, if we do not win this year, then I will resign. I will never coach again. That is powerful. That is powerful, accountable, emotional intelligence. It wasn't, he didn't threaten at anyone. He just talked to himself. He was able, his part of his self-awareness was to know what he's thinking and know what needs to be done and be realistic about it. And you see too many coaches these days always blame the players. The players didn't do this. The players didn't do that. Well, what do you think your job is as a coach? Your job is to get those players to understand and move them in the right direction. And if you're going to blame the players, what kind of collaborative environment do you have? You just don't have an environment. So I really was impressed with him. The other time I was impressed with him was when they were getting into the major races, like the trials to go to the Olympics. They were probably more nervous then than they were in the Olympics, because the team hasn't gone to the Olympics. And so his goal is to take them there, and all the rowers are nervous. So his job, what he did was he got with each of those rowers, went to their separate rooms and talked to them. And he gave them a message. He said, you are the best and you will win. You just make sure that you never doubt yourself at all. And so, that is, to me, that was very powerful a message as well, because I think back to a women's Olympic 8 when the young lady that was stroking the 8 that won a gold medal. This was U.S. The night before, she was nervous, very nervous, and the coach said, "You have what it takes." Then when she got in the boat, she was stroked, and then the one right behind her put her arm on the shoulder of the stroke, seeing that she was nervous now, and said, "I've got your back." And to me, that's powerful, very powerful emotion that is what you need in an organization. I mean, if I'm working, my job is to encourage and to support and to make sure that each member of the office or the organization succeeds. That is my goal, not give them critical yearly performance sheets. I mean, it should be done weekly. That, to me, that is where transactional leadership organizations really fail. And they're working on it now. The organizations are changing. But I just thought that was extremely powerful what Coach Ulbrichtson did, and you could see it all the way, all the time in his actions. Talking about anxiety and talking about pressure, was this coach went through more pressure, but he had been a successful rower. He had stroked an IRA winning crew when obviously in his senior year, and he was he knew rowing, and he knew the emotions, but all the pressures he had, and you know what? He put those pressures on himself, because when you get to the point that he was in 1936 and you say we have to win, all you're doing is thinking about what can I do that can make sure that I'm not part of the failure in coaching.
So I see what you're saying, right? The emphasis, and you're talking a lot about that coach. There's a lot of coaches out now today at various levels of competition that don't have a clue of what we're talking about. It's gray matter to them, especially as we try to say, no, there's an emotional intelligence skill here. It's measurable. You can see when it's present. You can see when it's lacking. Isn't that the message here, Bill?
Well, the point here is really, when I was in college in 1955, No, let me take that back. That's dating me a little. When I was taking graduate courses in leadership in 1995,
Mm-hmm.
is they showed us a movie, and the movie was 12 O'Clock High. I'm not sure. I think it was Gregory Peck, but I'm not certain who starred in that. But it showed about the pressures in the leadership, and that's what the professor wanted. I look at this movie right now, and it shows us about leadership. It shows us the challenges, the stresses, the anxiety. And when have you heard a team that won a national championship that didn't say, we've really gone through a lot of tough times and we've done it together? And as Michigan said, it's the world against us. They had that attitude. That it seemed like it seems like it, but it does seem like that. So what? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I was so 12 o'clock high. I have a note here. If we're in leadership and we understand pressure, pressure is emotional intelligence. The lack thereof means we snap under pressure. I'm going to check that movie out. You're saying Boys in the Boat really captures the essence of the coach and what the coach endures, emotional intelligence, as he deals with pressure. Let's transition this to the eight in the boat and the synchronicity. The movie, I'm thinking the two odd ones. One, the main character, fine looking young man, the blonde. I can't think of his name.
His name is Joe Rance.
And then the other gentleman that was right in front of him who had literally no expression.
Right.
It was expressionable, personality style.
The stroke.
And then he gets, what's that?
That position is called the stroke, the leader, the quarterback.
So again, you got personalities and the dynamics here, and I think what you're going to say is that when one is off, the whole synchronicity of the boat. There was a great scene when he says, "It's not we, it's one." There's eight that becomes one. Yeah,
well, one of the coaches that I'm going to talk about is George Pocock, and he was the one on the side always. He was the one that Ulbrichtson listened to. He listened to him. Matter of fact, he would ask him, and he was from England and had extreme knowledge. He was so knowledgeable in everything that he did. He was a philosopher, and so, but he had such great respect for the boat, and he built boats, and he would take a piece of cedar and talk about it like it was a life. And so he had such a rapport, and he was able to talk to the head coach. And sometimes the head coach would actually, let me give you a scene at one of the scenes, is that George Pocock's rowing the single, and he goes by Ulbrichtson when he has his 4/8 out on the water. And Ulbrichtson sees George Pocock rowing, and he sees the symphony in motion, is what he describes it. In fact, when he was trying to get, he liked Joe Rance, the seven person. The seven person most of the time was in the third boat, but he liked him. George Pocock was like a coach behind the scene. Don't we need people that are behind the scenes like George Pocock was? Don't we need a coach that can relate to the student athletes? I mean, relate and just talk to them about their well-being, not necessarily about how to put the oar in the water or take it out or pull it. And so he was able to communicate this to him. And he said, when you row, it's like being in an orchestra. And if you have one instrument that is out of tune, then it can destroy the whole performance. And rowing is exactly like that. When I was listening to this, I was thinking about a boat that we had at the Dad Vail in 2015. And we were rowing against the University of Michigan in the Dad Vail Regatta final, varsity 8. Tough competition. When we went through the bridge, the announcer said, FIT, which they call Florida Tech, FIT has always been a bridesmaid. They always come up here strong, but they never win. And so with 700 meters to go, we were one length down to the defending national champion, the University of Michigan. And so the rowers at that time, it reminded me so much of this before. I wasn't coaching them. Jim Granger was the coach. And I asked the seven person. Seven's as key as the eight. The seven carries the eight and moves the stroke back into it, gets the swing and moves it. And so it was the seven said to the eight, it's time. So at 700 meters to go, they took it up to 40. And 40 is very, very high. And then they took it up to 42, then 44, then 46, and then 48. And I looked at them rowing 48 at the last, 20 meters of the race. And I saw they were getting 1 foot of positive run at 48. I mean, that's probably as fast as any crew I've ever seen. And yet I thought at that moment, they are all right together. That same description that goes in the book that makes you feel good. I knew that time, and I said, that is the best race I've ever seen. Now, I wish I had seen the 36 Olympic race, because it was the same kind of feeling about the oneness. So comparing it to an orchestra like George Pocock did was a good way for him to understand. And then he told him one other thing. You see, he sort of took the seven man who had been in the third boat. He would tell him, you need to learn to like everyone in your boat, because when you need to make sure that they win. If they win, you win. And so when I was watching the Michigan football game the other night, I marveled more at the end of it when the players were hugging themselves. It wasn't just a casual hug. I mean, these guys were really, holding on to one another and talking in each other's ear. And that to me was as powerful as anything I saw on the field, because they did develop this oneness. They did care about one another. And how many times did everyone say that I love these guys? I love everyone on the team. Mm-hmm. Almost everyone that was interviewed said, these are my teammates. These are the people that I care about. Right. You see, there's much more power. There's much more. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. It's how can we say that sports and emotions are hand in hand, right? Emotional intelligence, being smart about it. Again, Harbaugh creating that culture of I think I'm going to put it out there. I think the new standard for coaches, whether you're preparing young athletes to come up the ranks and play at a higher level, or you're already there, and I'll put it up on the pros, NBA, NFL. It's to continue to enhance these emotional intelligence skills. You already know the game at the pro level, your proficiency on the task. Like you said, it doesn't matter the task. 22 varsity teams. I don't care if it's a big ball, a little ball, a big hole, a little hole. It doesn't matter the task, the sport. Is the coach within the culture of their program? Here it is. Creating emotionally intelligent athletes. The spin on this, Bill, if a coach is truly doing that, it is the zone. It is an athlete's ability to achieve optimal states, which we often call zone, in a team environment, a 5-man team on the court, an 8-man team in the boat, 11-man unit on the field. It is the synchronicity of their task in unison, where all 8 are so emotionally intelligent, they're able to summon their talent at will. the coach teaches that and uses that sport, that game, to develop those skill sets. That's the tie back into emotional intelligence.
And the results of it. I've always tried to simplify what the results are by saying that a team is greater than the parts, than the sum of the parts, and that is really true, because if you ever watch a team celebrate, it's more fun celebrating with teammates than it is celebrating by yourself, because you've developed this bond, this caring, and you will work harder to help to win for others than you would even yourself in many cases, because and also because you're doing it for others, it takes a lot of pressure off you, because there's this oneness of getting it done for one another, not just for yourself. And that's very hard to convey to athletes. I mean, they're always saying, put your team first, but they don't. But what they don't understand is that it makes them better, and it makes them more a part of a team. And what is life? What can we do in life as an individual? Not near what we can do as a team. And so that's why it's so powerful to understand emotional intelligence and to delve deep into it. You see, when you understand it, you can correct it easier than when you don't understand it. And you can go with all these different aspects of emotional intelligence, and you can work on it, because we're not perfect in any of them. Well, some of them better than others, and we can work on those, because it's extremely critical to understand it. So what I did recently is I took the assessment from 4 years ago on my emotional intelligence, and I went through it again. And I even shared it with my grandson, who's a junior in college at FSU now. I shared it with him, and I said, you have all the skills, you have all the knowledge you have, but if you don't have the emotional intelligence, you cannot produce the success level that you would like. And so I copied that 20-page document and gave it to him. And he said, can I take it? I said, you can, but go through it first and see how all the components are. Because I mentioned this to you the other day, that emotional intelligence really can be the backbone of any great leadership plan or any great leadership individual. Because if you want to say transformational leadership, when I looked through it again, I said to you, my gosh, this is transformational leadership. It's caring, it's listening, it's supporting. And these things are necessary. Going back to what the coach said to him, you are better than any of these people. Or in this boat, they also said, I have your back. We are together. You're so much more powerful.
Couple of things I just want to comment on. One, you handling this stuff to your Grant. You're Bill. Forgive me for just being blunt and asking. Your age. You're born. How old are you?
78 in a few days.
78 in a few days. So happy birthday in advance, yeah. Right? Happy birthday. But the genuine that's why there's so many Hall of Fames, and I mean that sincerely with your name on it. Is here you are in the 70s generation, still passing the knowledge and the wisdom down. I say still because so few do it. To your grandson, of all people, who's probably in his 20s now. If he's a junior, he's probably late teens, early 20s.
He's right at 20, right?
I think that's somewhere that fell off. If there were pearls to pass on, right, these being pearls, and you're doing just that. So I want to say thank you for that. Continuing to share and help others grow and become better. Let's talk just a minute, Bill, about I mean, there was a time when you and I met in 2014. You had 22. I think you had 22 varsity coaches.
We
So you
had
you
22 varsity sports, and
22 varsity sports.
probably another two and a half that number. So we had over 45 coaches.
And you've been doing this a while. So my point here is that you've seen a lot of coaches. You've seen some do it right. You've seen some maybe that could do it better. And in that case, you tried to help and guide them. What is it that, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. What is the makeup? And I pulled them up. You've got some diagrams. You got your book here. You got a lot of pearls of wisdom here. But if we were going to sum it up for a coach that's listening to the program, now I want an emotional intelligence spin. But what's the advice? A young aspiring coach, he wants to be the best that she can with the program. He's got these athletes. What would be the message? What's the takeaway with emotional intelligence?
Well, I would try to I really believe, and my experience has been that coaches, whether they're young or not, is sometimes they forget their role and the need. And I say this to every president college president. I say, you don't know the impact. You really don't know the impact you have when you talk to someone and you tell them positive things. You're important to us. And you should be doing that all the time. You should go out of your way to go to offices and to say that, because you've just made their day. How many times have you talked to someone yourself, and you talk to them, and you know what they've said to you? They've said, you've made my day. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so I would definitely say having a positive attitude, model that positive attitude. I've come from, when I talk to coaches, some of them I can just see when they say, we're not doing as well. The first thing I tell them to do, I said, why don't you get excited about what you're doing? Why don't you be positive about what you're doing? Why don't you show an interest, personal interest in everyone? Well, are you doing one-on-ones? Well, if you're not doing one-on-ones, then when you want to win, when you want to have a winning team, then think about doing one-on-ones, because people that are working under you, as far as student athletes, they want to be engaged and they want to feel empowered. And so what are you doing to help them? What are you doing to tell them that you're here to help them be the best they can be? I feel very good when someone says, I came to your school, I went to your program, and because I knew it would help me be the best I could be in the sport and in the classroom. And of course, I can tell you they went on to get their doctorate from Oxford, which isn't a bad school to get your doctorate from. But the point is that why wouldn't you do that? And I wrote an article on leadership principles for the 21st century, because I think the way it was in the past is in the past. So the other thing I would tell this person, why, there's so much, there's just so much that you could say, Parrish, but I would sort of zero in on psychological capital. And that is being positive. That is being confident in what you're doing. That is self-efficacy. That is sharing what hope is. Hope is not just hoping and doing nothing. Hope is looking at where you want to go, planning on where you want to go, and then moving in that direction, because that's hope. That's achieving your hope. And then the last thing I would tell them is perseverance prevails when all else fails. Don't get down, be resilient. That resiliency is so important. I can go from team to team to team and show you that. When Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, they had lost twice that year to the New Orleans Saints. They had lost home and away. And guess what they were going to have to do in the playoff? Their first game they were going to have to go back to New Orleans. Do you think they said we don't have a chance? Do you think they weren't resilient? Do you think they didn't have hope? Did you think they had any lack of efficacy and knowing what they could do? And do you think they had planned on this as far as their hope goes? And the answer is yes. Yes. And when they beat them, it wasn't a bit surprised. I mean, no, I wasn't a bit surprised because they had all these qualities here. And of course, Tom Brady added to it, but he wasn't lacking any confidence. And they did everything right. They worked so hard. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, you said a lot of stuff right there, and you gave again a great example of Champa. But you mentioned 4 or 5 emotional intelligence skills that all come out. Again, the message or the question was for a young coach. One of the things a successful coach does, we would say in the playbook of best practice, is one-on-one meetings. You say that. That's a fundamental.
Always my favorite. Always my favorite.
It's in those meetings that a coach will demonstrate either the lack thereof emotional intelligence, or they'll demonstrate their emotional intelligence. Because what you're doing, if you follow your map, right, you go to your page 3 on your assessment. Remember, 1, 2, and 3 are what. When you talk about resilience, that's self. We're doing those as individuals. But then when you go into 4 and 5 and what that coach is doing in that meeting, he's being empathetic. He's learning to anticipate. He's making observations of the athlete, relationship management, ego management, keeping things in the proper perspective, right? So many emotional intelligence skills come out into play on what you just said. I think that's the high-level message if our coach is listening. The coach needs emotional intelligence.
You've been listening to the EQ for Life podcast. To learn more about the EQ for Life podcast or Parrish, please contact us online at info@parrishowentaylor.com or call 866-487-2815. That's 866-487-2815.